Hello there, ZJ. How are you? I just finished putting in all my grades for all my students and posting them online, and now I can do whatever I want to. So I thought I would spend a little time working on another video for you. Now I told you last time that this time I would tell you about Native American Indian tribes, but I realize I'm going to have to actually explain better what tribes are first before we get to that explanation. So, tribes, which are sometimes also called nations, I said in the last video, they're groups of people, but there's really more to it than that. Tribes are very much centered on family. And if you look at this chart right here, you can see kind of an idea of how tribes are put together. So you see there's a bunch of different families, and some of these families are connected. In this chart, I've got three for each, but there would be more than that usually. But let's just say you got three different families, but they're all kind of related to each other. So you got one family maybe that's got a mom and dad and kids, maybe grandma and grandpa live there. And then you've got another family that's similar, but maybe the people in that family are the cousins of the people in the first one. And then maybe that third family there, maybe they're cousins too. So they're not all the same family in the same place, but they're part of a much bigger family, and that's called their clan. Well, the way a tribe works is when you have several clans, and each one of those clans is made up of a different bunch of different families, and those clans are distantly related to, like maybe the ancestors of the people in each of these clans used to be cousins a long time ago. And so they're all kind of together in this one large group that are kind of related, and they'll usually, have the same, speak the same language and believe a lot of the same things. But now, to help explain this, um, as well as to give you some background, some more family history, before we go to the Native American Indian tribes, we're going to uh, we're going to trace back our own family tree a little bit until we find a tribe. And to do that, we're going to go back to Europe briefly. Now remember, I told you before that most of your mom's side of the family came from the British Isles, or the United Kingdom of Great Britain, which is here circled in the map, and there's the close-up. And I told you that most of those ancestors came from England, which is in the red there, but that some came from the other parts of the British Isles. And I mentioned Scotland, which is up there in blue. Well, Scotland is what we're going to talk about briefly, um, as a way to look at tribes. Okay? Now, here is a guy from Scotland. Scotland, by the way, has a lot of castles in it, among other things. And part of the traditional way of dress for men in Scotland includes this thing that looks kind of like a plaid skirt, but it's not called a plaid skirt. It's actually called a kilt, and the little pouch in the front is always part of the kilt. By the way, Scotland is also known for a musical instrument called bagpipes. Now, maybe you've heard bagpipes before, and maybe you know what they are, or maybe you don't. They're very closely associated with Scotland, and they have a really different sound. There's nothing else in the world that sounds like bagpipes. Some people don't like the sound of bagpipes, but I think they're really, really cool. I like them. Another thing about people in Scotland is that they have their own special accent. Now, I'm not sure if you know what accents are. Maybe you do. But I'll explain it to you just in case. And if you already know, just bear with me. But essentially, accents, which are sometimes also called dialects, are different ways of talking in the same language, depending on where you're from. Again, it's all the same language. Places where, for example, there's a lot of places in the world where people speak English. But depending on where in the world you're from, the way that English sounds and the way you pronounce the words can be slightly different. This is something that I find really just fascinating, and I could do a whole video just on accents in English, and maybe I will. I don't know. But for the sake of this discussion, well, let me just give you an example of a Scottish accent. This young lady here, and you can look up her video on YouTube. Her name, I think, is English Jade, Jade, and she does videos explaining different accents in the British Isles. So here is her demonstrating a Scottish accent.
Hello everybody, welcome to my Scottish lesson. In today's lesson I'm going to teach you the Scots tongue, and if you follow me you'll be able to speak and understand Scottish. Let's begin with some Scottish isms. Now, I don't think that people in Scotland say this every day. A Scottishism is a phrase that brings to life the Scottish dialect, but people don't say it. Here we go. It's a bro bricht moonlicht nicht. Can you say that with me this time? It's a bro bricht moonlicht nicht. And the second one here, there's a moose loose about this house. Say it with me. There's a moose loose about this house. Okay, so in Scotland, we speak the same language, which is English, but up in Scotland, we could say they have their own dialect where they have some different words that we don't use in English.
By the way, we have a really, really good friend who is Scottish, from Scotland. Sometimes people say it Scottish. You can also say Scots. People used to say Scotch. That's where the word Scotch came from, but they don't use that one as much anymore. Anyway, this is our friend Simon, Simon Appleford, that you've never met. But here's a picture of him on top there with his wife Becky and with your mom. And there he is on the bottom with your grandma Robin. I think I took both of those pictures. And then there he is on the right, looking very, very Scottish in his kilt. Hey, look, Simon's on YouTube. Hey! At this point, you may be saying to yourself, this is all very interesting, or is it? But why are we even talking about Scotland when we were going to be talking about Native American Indians? It's almost like Grandpa has a tendency to get confused and forget what he's talking about, which is true. But I actually do have a reason this time. And the reason is that the people of Scotland used to be, once upon a time, a tribe, also known as the Gaels. They lived in what is now Scotland, but there was another big tribe there called the Picts. And they sort of struggled as to who was going to be in charge. And the fact it's called Scotland now might give you an idea as to who won. So, anyway, they used to be a tribe. But this was a really long time ago. It was like the year 400, so that was 1620 years ago. A long time ago. However, the Scotty tribe eventually took over and it became Scotty land. And as a tribe, they had clans. Now we're going to take a close-up look at Scotland. So there on the right, there's Scotland is the big blue area. And then on the left, that's Scotland, and you'll see it's divided up into a bunch of little colors. Each one of those things, each one of those places is an area that was controlled by a different clan. So as you can see, there were a lot of different clans. Now what we're going to do is zoom in and look a little bit closer at the bottom half of that map with all the different clans so that we can read what they say. And maybe you'll see some familiar names. Maybe you know people that are named this. But here's some of the clans. Kennedy and Lindsay, Campbell and Elliot, Douglas, Keith, Gordon. There's also Cameron and Stewart. Each of those a different clan with several different families, all with that name. Each clan had their own special color of plaid called a tartan that would be for use to show that they belonged to that clan, that was their colors. Most clans had one color. Some clans had 3 or 4 colors that they would use for different occasions. And so they would use these on their kilt, for example, or on their scarves, sometimes on their hats, so that people could look at them and know what clan that they were in. Now, let's take another look. Let's go back to that map that shows the bottom half of Scotland that is divided into clans. And there's one in particular that I wanted to draw your attention to, Clan MacDonald. Now, Mac, M-A-C, in Gaelic, which is the language that they originally spoke before they started speaking English, and some of them still speak Gaelic. Mac means son of. So MacDonald was originally son of Donald. Sometimes it's spelled MC instead of MAC. Anyway, Clan MacDonald. Does that name sound familiar at all? Where have I heard that word, the McDonald's? Oh, could it have anything at all to do with this, the golden arches? Well, actually, it kind of does, because the very first McDonald's restaurant, I think, was made back in the 1950s. The very first McDonald's restaurant was opened by 2 brothers whose last name was McDonald, and they were descended from the MacDonald clan. Their ancestors were members of Clan MacDonald. And do you know who else has ancestors that were part of the MacDonald clan? You and your mom and me and my mom and back and back. If you go back far enough to the 1700s, there was a guy named Magnus MacDonald from Clan MacDonald who was born in Glasgow, Scotland. Now, that is not a picture of Magnus MacDonald, and we know that for 2 reasons. Number 1 is I don't have any pictures of Magnus MacDonald. Number 2 is they had not invented cameras yet when Magnus MacDonald was alive. This is actually 2 actors from a TV show about Scotland. But I put that there because it does show what people dressed like in 1740 in Scotland. So, Magnus MacDonald was my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. And because you're 2 generations down from me, that makes him your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. And his wife, Agnes, it was Magnus and Agnes, no kidding. So his wife would be your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. Anyway, Magnus MacDonald was born in Scotland, and sometime by the time he was your mom's age, which is not that old, he moved to the well, it wasn't the United States yet. It was about to be. He moved to the English colonies in America. Now, just to sort of pinpoint how we're related to Magnus, my mom's, let me get this straight. Okay, so my mom is Judy, and her mom was Lulabelle, and her mom was Hattie. So my mom's dad, there where it's circled, was a McDonald. Actually, my mom's mom was a McDonald when she was born. Anyway, so that person there on my line, which would be two up on yours, was named McDonald, and so Magnus McDonald would have been his dad's grandpa. It gets very confusing and hard to keep up with when you start going that far back in time. Anyway, Magnus was in the colonies by certainly by 1775. By the time he was in his 30s, and we know that because he fought in the Revolutionary War, which was a really historically important war that started the United States of America. That's when the colonists broke away from England and decided to be their own country. So he fought in that war. I may have to do a whole set of videos later on the Revolutionary War because that one, like I said, that one was pretty important. Anyway, after that war was over and the 13 colonies had become the 13 states and were now the United States of America, well, Magnus McDonald lived in North Carolina. And after the war was over, he was the government paid him his back pay for when he was a soldier by giving him land in this new state called Tennessee. And so that's how he wound up there. Of all the different types of English speaking Europeans who came to what would become the United States, out of all of them, we're talking about not Europeans in general, English and Irish and French and Spanish and so on. Out of all of them, people from Scotland, it seems, did much better at being able to communicate with the Native American Indians, and they did a whole lot better at being able to understand how that culture worked. And that's because they too had clans and tribes. So they understood much better what that was and how it worked. And for that reason, a lot of Scottish people wound up working closely with Native American people, particularly in the South, and a lot of them wound up getting married. Among the Cherokees, for example, a lot of Scottish men wound up coming over and getting married to Cherokee women, much more so than any other European group. Well, now you know a lot more about what tribes are and how they work. And you know a lot more now than you ever thought you would know, probably, about Scotland. And you know a little bit more about your own family history. So next time I will definitely get to talking specifically about Native American Indian tribes. Okay. By the way, I'm wearing this hat here because it is kind of similar. It's not exactly, but it's kind of similar to the McDonald tartan colors. And I've also got on my sweater here, I've got that's the family crest of the McDonald clan. I'll see if I can put up a picture of that so that you can see it better. All right. Well, have a good day, and I love you, and I will be videoing at you again soon. Bye bye. And here's that family crest. The family crest is basically a European tradition where there's like a shield that's got certain images on it that represent your family. So this is pretty cool. However, they won't give me free hamburgers at McDonald's. What's up with that?